Picture this. It's January 2020. The world is grinding to a halt. COVID is spreading. Businesses are closing. And in the middle of all this chaos, the world's most powerful people launch something called the Great Reset. Now, if you've heard about this, you've probably seen one of two versions of the story. Either it's a benign proposal about making capitalism more sustainable, or it's the most terrifying conspiracy theory you've ever heard, complete with global takeovers, the end of private property, and elites controlling every aspect of your life. But here's the thing. Neither version is telling you the full story, because the truth is way more interesting than either extreme. Today, we're diving deep into what the Great Reset actually is, what's really happening behind closed doors, and why you should care about something that's supposed to reshape our entire world by 2026 and beyond. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you will understand why this might be one of the most important conversations happening right now that almost nobody is talking about honestly. Let's get into it. So, what is the Great Reset? At its core, it's an initiative by the World Economic Forum, the folks who host that big annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland. They saw the global crisis as a unique window of opportunity to press reset on the global economy. Their official line is all about building a future that's more resilient, equitable, and sustainable. This involves a heavy focus on two key areas: the fourth industrial revolution, think AI, biotech, and the Internet of Things, and something they call stakeholder capitalism. This isn't just about making profits for shareholders. It's about businesses also serving the interests of customers, employees, society, and the planet. Sounds pretty good on paper, right? A greener, fairer world where technology solves our biggest problems. But this is where things start to get complicated. The reason the Great Reset sparks so much debate isn't just about the what, it's about the how and the who. Critics point to the WEF's own proposals, like promoting digital identities, rethinking private ownership, and creating global governance systems for everything from pandemics to climate change. This is where the alarm bells start ringing for many. Is this about cooperation, or is it about control? For example, one of their infamous thought pieces had the headline, "Welcome to 2030. I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better." While they claim it was just a scenario to spark discussion, you can see how it fuels fears about a future where individual freedoms are traded for state-provided convenience. The concern is that these ideas, pushed by unelected global elites, could lead to a massive consolidation of power, eroding national sovereignty and personal autonomy under the guise of progress and safety. It's the scale and ambition of the project that makes people wonder what the real endgame is. We're not talking about small policy tweaks. We're talking about a fundamental redesign of our social contract. So is this a roadmap to a better world, or is it a blueprint for a global technocracy? The truth, as always, is likely somewhere in the gray area, and it's a conversation that will shape our future for decades to come. Okay, so let's talk about the Great Reset. You've heard the name. You've seen the memes, you've probably heard some pretty wild theories about it. But what is it, actually? Let's cut through the noise, get past the conspiracies, and look at what was actually proposed. It all started in June 2020. The world is in lockdown, and the World Economic Forum, or WEF, launches an initiative called the Great Reset. Now, the WEF is the group that hosts that big fancy meeting in Davos every year, where billionaires, CEOs, and world leaders get together. Their stated mission? To shape global, regional, and industry agendas. Yeah, you heard that right. Shape global agendas. The organization was founded back in 1971 by a German economist named Klaus Schwab. And yes, he's become the face of a lot of these theories. So when the pandemic hit, Schwab and the WEF saw it as a massive opportunity. They looked at the chaos and said, "This crisis has shown every single crack in our global system. Let's not just patch it up. Let's use this moment to rebuild everything from the ground up. But better." They laid out three main goals. First, to create what they call a stakeholder economy. The idea is that businesses shouldn't just be chasing profits for their shareholders. They should also be responsible for their impact on society and the environment. This means more regulations, new kinds of taxes, and making companies accountable for more than just their bottom line. Second, use the pandemic recovery money to accelerate the fight against climate change. We're talking massive investments in green technology, putting a price on carbon emissions, and ending subsidies for fossil fuels. The core idea was, Don't let this crisis go to waste. Use it to pivot toward a green economy. And third, they wanted to harness what they call the fourth industrial revolution. This is all the stuff you hear about: AI, automation, the complete digital transformation of our lives. The goal was to use these powerful new technologies to build a more efficient, sustainable, and interconnected world. Now, on the surface, who could argue with that? A fairer, greener, smarter world sounds pretty good, right? But this is where things get complicated. It's not the what that has people worried. It's the how. The methods they propose for achieving these goals are what set off alarm bells all over the world. So let me tell you about the one phrase that basically launched 1,000 conspiracy theories. You will own nothing. And you'll be happy. If you've spent any time online in the last few years, you've seen this quote plastered everywhere. It's become the smoking gun, the ultimate proof that a shadowy cabal of elites wants to strip you of your property, your freedom, your entire way of life. But what's the real story behind it? Well, back in 2016, 4 years before the Great Reset was even a thing, the WEF published a series of predictions for the year 2030. These were written by different experts from their global future councils. One of these pieces was an essay by a Danish politician named Ida Auken. She wrote a kind of speculative, futuristic thought experiment. She asked readers to imagine a city in 2030 where, thanks to technology, almost everything is a shared service. You don't own a car because self-driving vehicles are available instantly. You don't own a house because you can easily rent any kind of space you need, whenever you need it. The idea was that technology had made products so cheap and accessible that the very concept of private ownership had become obsolete. Her opening line was, "Welcome to the year 2030. I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house." Now, what's fascinating is that Auken herself has said over and over again that this was not her vision of a perfect utopia. It was a thought experiment designed to start a conversation about the pros and cons of these emerging technological trends. Her article even had a whole section about the potential downsides, like the loss of privacy. But then, someone in the WEF's marketing department took these predictions and made a short video. And in that video, they pulled out that one line and presented it as, "You'll own nothing, and you'll be happy. Whatever you want, you'll rent, and it'll be delivered by drone." And that was all it took. That single quote, ripped completely out of its original context, and turned into a catchy, terrifying soundbite, became the face of every fear people had about the Great Reset. It got attached to the initiative, even though it was written 4 years earlier by a totally different person for a completely different reason. The WEF eventually tried to do damage control and took the article down, but it was way too late. The cat was out of the bag. But this raises a much more important question. Even if this wasn't the official plan, why did it resonate so deeply with so many people? Why were people so ready to believe that global elites wanted to take everything away from them? Maybe it's because, deep down, there is something in the actual Great Reset proposal that does fundamentally threaten the way we've lived for the last century. And maybe people can feel that, even if they can't quite put it into words. So let's break down what's actually in the plan, because once you look at the details, you start to understand why this is so controversial. And it has nothing to do with wild conspiracy theories. Let's start with something called ESG. It stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. It's a framework for rating companies based on factors beyond just their financial performance. How much carbon do they emit? How do they treat their employees? How diverse is their board of directors? It sounds good, right? Who doesn't want companies to be more responsible? But here's the reality. Massive investment firms like BlackRock, which manages trillions of dollars, are now using these ESG scores to decide where to invest their money. If your company doesn't meet their ESG standards, you might not get access to capital. And who sets these standards? Not elected governments, not voters. It's private organizations and large asset managers. The Great Reset explicitly calls for these ESG metrics to become central to the future of capitalism. This effectively means that the people who control the rating systems get to control which businesses thrive and which ones fail. Then there's stakeholder capitalism. For a long time, the model was simple. A company's main job is to make money for its shareholders. The new model, which the Great Reset promotes, says companies must serve all stakeholders, not just investors, but also employees, local communities, and the environment. Again, it sounds wonderful, but think about it. If a company's success isn't just measured by profit anymore, but by these vague social goals, who gets to decide what serving the community actually means? Who holds them accountable? It creates a system where a small group of people can impose their values on the entire economy. And now for the really controversial part: central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, programmable money. The Great Reset agenda is big on using digital technology to create smarter financial systems. Imagine a world with no physical cash, where all your money is digital and held by the central bank. Because it's programmable, that money could come with rules attached. Maybe you can only spend it on products that are deemed sustainable. Maybe it has an expiration date to force you to spend it and stimulate the economy. Or, in a more extreme scenario, maybe your account could be frozen if your social behavior doesn't align with government expectations. Sound like science fiction? China already has a system like this in place, and over 100 other countries are actively exploring or developing their own digital currencies right now. And here is the kicker that ties it all together. The WEF calls for public-private partnerships to implement these changes. This means governments and giant corporations working together to roll out these new systems. Which raises the most important question of all. If governments and corporations are on the same team, who is representing the interests of the people? Where is the democratic debate? Where is our choice? The Great Reset is filled with beautiful words like sustainability, equity, and resilience. But the mechanism for achieving these goals seems to involve a massive transfer of power. Power away from individuals and elected national governments, and toward unelected global institutions and mega corporations. That's the part they're not so loud about. And that is what you really need to know. So why am I calling this the 2026 Great Reset? Because that's the year when many of these global policies are slated to really start taking effect. This isn't some sudden event where a switch is flipped. It's a gradual transformation, and we are right in the middle of it. Think about what's happened since 2020. The pandemic gave governments unprecedented control over our lives. We saw lockdowns, vaccine passports, and contact tracing. Most people accepted it because it was an emergency. But many of those emergency powers, they never really went away. They just became normalized. Right now, digital IDs are being rolled out across Europe. Carbon tracking is becoming a standard practice. ESG investing has skyrocketed from a fringe concept to a multi-trillion-dollar industry in just a few years. Major corporations are redesigning their entire business models around these principles, not because they suddenly grew a conscience, but because that's where the money and regulatory pressure are pushing them. By 2026, many of these systems will be deeply embedded in our society. Digital currencies will likely be launched in several major economies. New international agreements on climate and sustainability will be in place. The entire infrastructure for this new system will be built. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night. When you look at the Great Reset proposals, the actual documents, the speeches, the policy papers, they never really ask if this is what people want. They assume it's necessary. They assume they know better. There's a kind of technocratic arrogance to it all. It's the belief that complex global problems require complex global solutions, managed by experts and elites, because regular people just don't understand. But historically, when powerful people decide they know what's best for everyone else and have the tools to enforce it, it doesn't usually end well. I'm not saying this is some evil master plan. I think most people pushing for it genuinely believe they're saving the world. But good intentions don't guarantee good outcomes. And centralizing power, even for good reasons, is a dangerous game. Here's what I find most fascinating. Mainstream media and fact-checkers will tell you that the Great Reset conspiracy theories are totally false, that there's no plan to take away your property or freedom. But then you read the actual proposals and watch what's being implemented. You realize the conspiracy theorists might be wrong about the details, but they're not wrong about the direction things are heading. No one's going to show up at your door and confiscate your house. That's silly. But are they trying to make car ownership less necessary through concepts like 15-minute cities and shared transportation? Yes. Are they pushing for digital IDs that can track your carbon footprint and purchases? Yes. Are they promoting a vision where most people rent instead of own property? Yes. Are they building financial systems where your money can be controlled and monitored in ways that cash never could be? Yes. You see, the thing about the Great Reset isn't that it's a secret conspiracy. It's that it's being done right out in the open. They publish their plans. They talk about it at Davos. They write books about it. The conspiracy is just people realizing that when you add up all these individual policies, they create a world that looks very different from the one we have now. A world with less individual autonomy, less financial privacy, and more centralized power. And maybe that worries people because it should. Look, I'm not here to tell you the Great Reset is evil or good. I'm here to tell you it's real. It's happening. And the most important thing they are not telling you is this: you have a choice in how this unfolds. These policies don't just happen automatically. They require our acceptance. If enough people push back and demand transparency and accountability, the story can change. But you can't push back against something you don't understand. And that's why conversations like this are so important. So here we are. The 2026 Great Reset. It's not a single event or a conspiracy, but a genuine, ambitious attempt to reshape our entire economic and social system, pushed by some of the most powerful people on the planet. And the biggest thing they aren't telling you? That this isn't inevitable, that you are not powerless. The future is still being written. Some aspects of this reset might actually be good. Fighting climate change is important. Making corporations more accountable is probably necessary. But the way it's being done from the top down without real democratic input, and concentrating power in fewer and fewer hands, that's where the problem lies. History teaches us that any system relying on the benevolence of the powerful will eventually fail. Any vision that requires people to just trust the experts and give up control is dangerous, no matter how well-intentioned. The question isn't whether we need to address global challenges. We absolutely do. The question is who gets to decide how. Who holds the power, and where's the accountability? So, what do? First, stay informed. Don't just accept what you're told from either side. Read the actual proposals. Look at what's being implemented in your own community. Second, get involved. Talk to people. Share information. Vote in every election. Local politics matter more than you think. And third, don't let anyone tell you that asking questions makes you a conspiracy theorist. Skepticism of concentrated power isn't paranoia, it's common sense. The 2026 Great Reset isn't coming. It's already here. The question is, will you be a part of shaping it? Or will you just wake up one day and realize the world changed around you? What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this video opened your eyes to something new, hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep digging into the stories that truly matter. Until next time, stay curious, stay skeptical, and stay free.